Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 was going to be Avatar: The Way of Water, number 2 would be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, number 3 would be I Wanna Dance with Somebody, number 4 would be Babylon, and number 5 would be Violent Night. And I only got 2 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend because a movie that was out of the top 5 last weekend bounced back up. I predicted the entire same top 5 from last weekend because I didn't think much was going to change. Turns out a movie was able to sneak its way back in, so nobody got their predictions right, obviously, because, nobody saw this coming. Save for one person. Here's your shout out right now, cutting it pretty close as far as submitting the prediction, but, this could be early Friday, this could be Thursday night, so I will allow this. You know what I mean? So congratulations. By the way, Happy New Year, everybody. This is the first episode of Box Office Talk, and I guess my first official upload of 2023. That's crazy. That's great. I say first official upload because it's not like I've made anything else other than Box Office Talk for like the last 2 months. Anyways, let's go over what happened in the top 10. Number 1 was, of course, Avatar: The Way of Water once again, but this movie did something quite impressive that I would like to break down. Last weekend when I did the video, the estimates were sitting at like 58 or something like that, and it was like, okay, yeah, a little more than 50% of a drop from, the opening weekend, so not great, but, Christmas, it'll still do very well. When the official numbers finally came out, it actually did a little bit better. It's sitting at like 63 million that weekend. So it was like, okay, not that bad of a, kind of an up from the Christmas estimates. This weekend, unheard. I don't think we have ever, obviously we have seen like small drops before. We've seen movies remain in the same spot for a while. I'm not sure if ever on this show we have actually seen a movie that has had like close to a 0% drop. It literally didn't drop at all. Last weekend it made officially $63 million. This weekend it has made $63 million once again. So let's talk about this in depth. So now this adds to a domestic total of $421 million. As far as the 2022 film releases so far, the highest grossing films of 2022, it is now the third highest grossing film of the year, behind Black Panther: Wakanda Forever by $16 million, which it's obviously going to outgross in the next day. So that means it outgrossed Thor: Love and Thunder by $79 million, The Batman and Minions 2 by $52 million, Jurassic World by $45 million, and Doctor Strange by $10 million this year. From last weekend to now, it's outgrossed all of those movies. That is incredible. You know what I mean? That's outstanding. As far as James Cameron's personal filmography, it still needs $238 million until it outgrosses Titanic, and it still needs a whopping $364 until it outgrosses the first Avatar. But I mean, shit, with a hold like this, and we're entering January where, some movies will definitely still have the potential to make some money, but it could end up being that Avatar has a pretty clear hold of number 1 at least until February, because wow, this was an incredible third weekend. Wow, this is amazing. And worldwide, now it adds to a total of $1,378 million. So what does that mean for the 2022 releases worldwide? It is now the second highest grossing film of the year worldwide, behind Top Gun: Maverick by $109 million. It's going to do this by next weekend. We are going to see Avatar: The Way of Water become the highest grossing film worldwide next weekend. And it still has a ways to go as far as how much more money it can make. That is incredible. So it outgrossed Minions 2 by $441 million, Doctor Strange by $426, and Jurassic World by $375 million. That's amazing. To all the people who are still trying to say like, oh, it didn't meet up to expectations, it's a flop, yada yada. How? It's literally about to be the highest grossing film of the year. You know what I mean? And it's not going to stop as soon as it passes, okay, it passed exactly what Top Gun made, so it's done. It's like, no, it's gonna keep going and going. That's wow. Crazy, and a lot of it does come back to how great of a hold it has now had, in these past weekends. So this is spectacular. As far as Titanic and the first Avatar, it still needs $829 million worldwide until it outgrosses Titanic, and $1,521 million until it outgrosses Avatar. But if you're looking at it purely as just like, well, it hasn't outgrossed first Avatar, it hasn't come, extremely close to outgrossing first Avatar yet, so flop, not as successful, big disappointment. It's like, what planet could you you possibly be living on now where that's the logic you're looking at here? This is spectacular. You know what I mean? We have talked a lot on this show about how, movie audiences, box office numbers, some of them reach the heights of what they were pre-pandemic and even a couple years prior to that, to 2019. But still, there's this kind of like feeling of like, oh, but nothing feels like it can fit in unless it's a big comic book sequel or it's a remake of something else. And yes, Avatar 2 is now, this is part of a franchise, but really take a step back. We have not gotten a TV show or really any like big video games or like comics or book to continue out the franchise. Like, it's really just been that first movie and I guess like the new theme park ride they made. This is a sequel to an original film 13 years after the fact, and people were, constantly going like, nobody cares, you've taken too long. And hell, maybe at one point I was even like that, like, oh, maybe not like completely like who cares, but like, man, how long are you gonna keep pushing this back to make it, But like that wait actually turned out to be a pretty strong asset in its box office domination right now. And I just, to anyone who still wants to say like this is disappointing, that's a flop, like please just get your head out of the sand and take a look around, dude. For anyone who tries to say like who cares about Avatar, it's like, why aren't you seeing these numbers? Why don't you know what people are actually saying? Anyways, let's move on to number 2, another movie that had a pretty strong hold, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Now, when the first weekend came out, I was a little bummed by kind of the lackluster opening, and I was even mentioning then, like, yeah, it'll probably still hold over well because of the holidays, but it's not the greatest opening. It's actually doing, I'm a little bit more optimistic about its chances right now. It made $16 million this weekend. Now that adds to a domestic total of $60 million. So as far as the first Puss in Boots, it still needs $89 million until it outgrosses that domestic run. But as far as the other DreamWorks films domestically, it has outgrossed the following. Spirit Untamed by $43 million. It's a couple $100,000 over Abominable. You remember that 2019 hit? It outgrossed The Boss Baby Back in Business by $3 million. The Croods: A New Age by $2 million. El Dorado by $10 million, Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit by $4 million, and $34 million over Sinbad. And it only needs $4 million until it outgrosses Flushed Away. So now we're seeing this movie, outgross some of the lower tier DreamWorks ones, and the chances of this movie, being considered a success in the future and a different path forward as far as how you can make these animated films instead of trying to copy exactly what you've done before for the last, couple million years, that is looking a lot more likely. Worldwide, it is sitting at $129 million, so they are about $51 million until it doubles the $90 million budget, but since they held over pretty well this weekend and the numbers are at a pretty reasonable strong point, I think we'll be seeing this budget doubled in no time. As far as the other DreamWorks films, it needs $17 million until it outgrosses The Boss Baby 2, but it's outgrossed Road to El Dorado by $64 million, the first Spirit movie by $23 million, and $49 million over Sinbad, and $3 million over Captain Underpants. So yeah, this movie is still doing very well. It still needs $425 million until the original movie. So yes, both domestically and worldwide, it still has a ways to go until it can, properly compete with that first movie. But still, this is pretty good. I'm looking at this a little more optimistically than I was last week. It was kind of like, yeah, I know Christmas holdover, but oh man, this sucks. Now I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have panicked right away. And I think especially word of mouth, now that people are seeing it, it's not just, the early critic reviews, people are actually seeing and going like, wait a minute, there is a little something different here. This is actually pretty great, not just the animation too, but also it's got a pretty good story, I'm really happy with this. Let's move on to number 3, which is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This is the movie that bounced back up. It made $4.8 million, adding to a domestic total of $437 million. It outgrossed Captain Marvel by $11 million, so now it is on the road to outgrossing Age of Ultron by $22 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at $818 million, so it's still a ways to go until it outgrosses Thor Ragnarok. It still needs $32 million to do that, but still, this movie is still doing very, 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 very well. It is very interesting to look at this, and I already talked about how Avatar is like on the road to crushing this, and yeah, even though this movie is still in the top 10, it's still collecting some money. It's just not going to compete with Avatar come the next couple of days as far as outgrossing it, which, that's totally fine. Who cares? It's both Disney, so it doesn't matter, but Still, I don't know. I just wanted to talk about Avatar again because that was incredible. Let's move on to number 4, which was I Want to Dance with Somebody, making 4.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $14 million. So as far as the director's previous films, it has outgrossed Black Nativity by 7 million, and it's a couple 100,000 over Eve's Bayo. So now it is just behind the director's highest-grossing film, which is Harriet. So 29 million behind that. Whether it actually gets that amount, maybe. I guess you can't really tell in the next couple weeks of January releases. Maybe this movie will get some kind of path forward and remaining in the top. Probably not. I don't know what I'm saying. Worldwide, it is sitting at 27 million though, which is still not close to doubling that $45 million budget. Not even close to crossing that initial limit of 45 million. But this movie is also similar to the domestic numbers. It is now only behind Harriet, needing $17 million to do that. It outgrossed Eve's Bio by 13 million worldwide. So that is pretty good for the director's personal, filmography, just her own personal records. Like, yeah, this movie is doing pretty good and might be able to compete with Harriet at some point. But, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to add from last time. Let's move on. You know what? I will add something else. I am at least glad that the writer of Bohemian Rhapsody doesn't have another, out of nowhere success like Bohemian Rhapsody was. I still don't know if I can really properly explain how good Bohemian Rhapsody did, legitimately, because you take Rocket Man that came out a couple months after, nowhere near as much, the Aretha Franklin biopic, and that was still kind of COVID-ish kind of time, 2021, and now we have this one where it's a good majority of people are coming back to theaters, but they're still being selective. Some people are still not coming back completely, and this movie's just not doing well. So I'm just glad because, look, I'm not a fan of Bohemian Rhapsody, you know this, and maybe I also wasn't a big fan of this movie, and I largely attribute that to the screenwriter, not to be petty, but that's all. Let's move on to number 5, which is still a big travesty to me, Babylon, making 2.7 million, adding to a domestic total of $10 million. Now, it only needs 3 million until it outgrosses the domestic run of Whiplash, which, hey, maybe it will be able to do that next weekend or maybe the weekend after. But with these kind of returns, it's not looking very likely. That being said, I am glad to see at least some people at least try to come to this movie's defense, at least on Twitter, if that's the only place people will go to defend that movie. As far as people should really go see this, instead of skipping out on it. Don't listen to the people who are quick to say oh, it's just some pretentious director saying I love Hollywood and old Hollywood was great for 3 hours. It's there's a little bit more to it than that. I can understand maybe not wanting to see a 3-hour movie or if you just personally didn't really engage with the material like a lot of other people, but there's just this quick dismissal of well, there's just a lot of storylines in it, and it's a long movie, so messy, so that's bad. Don't go see it. Don't engage with this movie artistically at all. It's even if you don't agree with those artistic decisions, there's still something there, and it's just a very big bummer that this movie is not doing that great. Like I said, I'm glad that Damien Chazelle has a contract with them, a first look deal for any other future projects, but I just hope that this movie's failure isn't gonna affect that at all, because I still want to see more Damien Chazelle projects down the line. I don't want this to be the last thing he ever does, and then he just goes the streaming route, makes Paramount Plus originals for the rest of his life or something like that. That would be the worst thing in the world. We need more movies in the theaters, damn it. even big ballsy ones like this. We need more people to go out and support these again, god damn it. Anyways, let's move on to number 6, which is Violent Night, making 2.1 million, adding to a domestic total of 47 million. It's actually 8 million away from outgrossing the domestic run of Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, the director's other film. So, hey, maybe, I don't know, it only made 2 million this weekend. We're exiting out of December Christmas season, so maybe this movie probably won't have the kind of hold it needs, and especially since it's on VOD, I don't really see it maybe getting this, but hey, they got pretty close, all things considered. Worldwide, they're sitting at $72 million. They are 8 million away from quadrupling that $20 million budget. Maybe if they didn't put it on VOD right away, they'd have a bit more of a chance, because the only way you can go see it is to pay for a ticket in the theater. But I'm not a genius. Maybe that was part of a good strategy. Put this Christmas action movie on VOD same weekend as Christmas. I don't know. It's whatever. whatever. Let's. I have nothing else to add. This movie's already tripled its budget, so it doesn't matter if it quadruples it or not. It's probably fine. And, with the VOD sales, I'm sure it's doing pretty good there. Too bad the show isn't about examining VOD numbers, though. Let's move on to number 7, which is The Whale, making 1.3 million. It's good to see this movie actually in the millions this time instead of the fucking thousands, 100,000s like last time. So 1.3 million, adding to a domestic total of 5.7 million. I still don't know what the budget of this movie is. I still haven't found that anywhere, but like I said last week, one location, and yes, there's a lot of like prosthetic work and makeup, going into the budget. I'm not sure how much it would inflate it. But I can't see it being that expensive considering, you have a limited cast of like five people really as the main principal cast, and it's just them throughout, and it's one location. So I can't see it being too big. So maybe this number is good for them, but there's just no way of knowing. I do know that number 8 is still not doing very well, which is The Fabelmans. It's still clinging on for dear life in the bottom half of this list. So, it's still a little encouraging, but I literally keep seeing the promo to rent this on VOD every single time my TV is like inactive. You know what I mean? Like when the TV is still on, but you haven't been watching it for a while. So it's like, hey, check out these things. It's ad time. Either way, it made 1.1 million, adding to a domestic total of 12 million, but still nowhere near doubling or even crossing that $40 million budget. So still a big bummer, but I am at least glad to see some people going out and venturing out to see this movie in a theater when it is at home right now. So that's at least a little bit encouraging. Number 9 is The Menu, making 1.07 million, adding to a domestic total of 36 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 64 million. So I don't know. This movie is still doing very well. This movie, I believe, is also on VOD now, I believe. Or no. It's coming on HBO Max on the 3rd in 2 days. So that's what it is. So it's good to see it. It's doubled its $30 million budget at this point, and it's made a little bit over that. And now it's going to be seen by a lot more people now that it's going to be free on a streaming service you pay for. So, hey, there you go. Let's move on to number 10, the final movie for this first video of 2023, this first box office talk video of 2023. Maybe, hopefully, the goodbye for this movie, because bringing this up every single time is kind of pathetic and sad. Strange World, making 538,000 this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 37 million. For those of you wondering, no, it did not outgross Treasure Planet domestically. It's still 1 million off from doing that. Worldwide, it is sitting at 63 million. And no, it has not outgrossed Fantasia 2000. It is 6 million off from doing that. So, new Disney animated film, where usually a Disney animated film in the theaters would be a surefire hit, no matter how high the gross would be compared to their other hits. Now we have a new one that, went to Disney Plus a month after it came out, and it's just barely had an impact. The opening weekend was lackluster for a Thanksgiving release, and it can't even outgross some of Disney's very easy, you should be able to outgross these movies kind of films. So goodbye. I don't know. It's been a sad, pathetic run, but hopefully the next couple Disney animated films, now that Chapek is out, Bob Iger is back in, someone who cares about animated films a little bit more than Chapek would. Maybe we can get some good marketing campaigns going again. And hopefully that next Pixar one doesn't flop. That one hopefully won't go to Disney Plus as a, first day streaming like Turning Red was, or Luca for that matter. I don't know. Who cares? Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I am once again going with Avatar: The Way of Water. How could you not at this point? But number 2, I am going with Muthrigan, which is what I'm not gonna call it Megan. It is just Muthrigan to me. You put the 3 in the title, you're gonna get me pronouncing it Muthrigan, like Fan Forstick a couple years back. Then number 3, I'm going with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Number 4, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And number 5, I Want to Dance with Somebody. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.